Testing, testing, 1, 2.
Let's go ahead and get started. I'm Casey Nichols. I'm the Self-Governance Director with the Citizen Potawatomi Nation in Central Oklahoma. Welcome to the session on innovations among Native CDFIs, or Community Development Financial Institutions. So if that's what you're here for, you're in the right place. It's my privilege to introduce my friend and colleague who will kind of be leading this discussion, and I hope that you learn a lot or can offer your own experience today. So let me go ahead and get started here. I want to introduce again my friend and my colleague, Cindy Logston. She's the Executive Director and CEO of the Citizen Potawatomi Community Development Corporation. In this role, she oversees the loan servicing and internal systems management, administers the reporting and relationships with funding entities, and oversees the financial reporting for the organization. Cindy came to the Citizen Potawatomi Nation in 2004, I believe just a year after we started the Community Development Corporation, and she came to us after a 15-year career in banking. She implemented programs such as the Citizen Potawatomi Asset Builders IDA program and has assisted in making over $40 million in loans to Native American entrepreneurs. Cindy has laid the groundwork for introducing multiple products to tribal communities, such as an employee loan program, financial education initiatives, credit builder loan, Jump Start Auto Loan, Potawatomi Business Network, and micro business loan programs. She also secured funds through the 2015 CDFI bond program for $16 million. She currently serves on the advisory boards of Oklahoma Native Asset Coalition and Midwest Renewable Capital, and is the board treasurer of the Native CDFI Network. Before I ask Cindy to come up to the podium and just give you an introduction and overview of how our Community Development Corporation operates, I was curious if we could get a show of hands of who knows what a CDFI is and who has one. Okay. Okay, and who has one in your own tribal community? Awesome. Okay, great. Okay, so with that, let's give a round of applause for Cindy Loxton, please.
Hello, hello. Good to be with everyone. It's an honor to be able to speak with you guys today. So I'm glad to see that there is some experience in the room about what a CDFI is, but for those that may not know, I'll give some background there. CDFI stands for Community Development Financial Institution, and this is a designation from the U.S. Treasury. The U.S. Treasury is, this program is geared towards underserved individuals, and that could be low to moderate income individual, it could be disabled individuals, but there's actually a native set aside for native CDFIs. And across the nation, there's about 70 of us. Sometimes it drops off a few, but it's right in the 70 mark. But that's a really close-knit community. And if you have a CDFI in your community, I probably know, at least know of your CDFI. But that's one thing that's really cool about CDFIs is that we can participate, we can contribute to our tribal communities. We can be innovative. We can think outside the box. You know, we're not this bank that everything has to fit in a box. You know, it fits in this box or you're a no. And with a CDFI, you can be innovative, right? You can think differently. You go, oh, what is my community needing? Maybe you see a need for housing. You see a need for business development and business growth. What's going to feed your tribal economies? And I think that if we all step back, maybe do some feasibility studies or market studies, we might be able to see that there's a gap somewhere along the way. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about, well, CDFIs, before I move on to the CPCDC, CDFIs might be structured differently. The CPCDC happens to be a tribally chartered, not-for-profit. So I do have my own audited financials and so forth, but they roll up into the tribal audit. But a lot of native CDFIs are actually, they're actually incorporated underneath the state and don't have close ties to a certain tribe. It benefits me from being incorporated under the tribe sometimes it doesn't, because maybe I get knocked out of funding or something like that. But over the course of time, CPN is fully committed to the CPCDC, and like when we need tribal match, CPN is there. The three chairman, vice chairman, and secretary treasurer of our tribe sit on our board. We have a separate board of directors, but they don't have access or don't have influence in our loan decisions. And that is because, you know, we know tribal politics and what that could involve. But so the CPCDC was actually, we were incorporated in 2013, but we didn't become a CDFI until 14. So I would say that very first year, our financials, we probably closed out the books with about probably $300,000 in total assets on the books. Right now, we're about at 48 million. So as in a native CDFI, we're probably the largest non-bank CDFI in the nation. It's because we've been able to basically participate in programs and be innovative, but participate in maybe large funding programs like the Bond Guarantee Program. When we applied for that back in 2014, we only had 16 million in assets. So you can see, in not a very long time, 7 years' time, we've been able to, triple our total asset size just to be able to grow to scale through these large programs. This was a total economic plan of our tribal chairman, Barrett. He saw that, you know, there were many contractors working for the tribe that maybe weren't getting paid. You know, they were having to wait their 90 days and needed some working capital. He was seeing that, you know, tribal members were going to the bank and being turned down. So he heard about the CDFI thing. Oh, you can get matching dollars, and it was part of the whole economic development plan. We've been very successful, and our bread and butter is actually the business development side. We've run the gamut. We still close $4,500 loans. We've had loans as large as $8.5 million. We've been lending to tribes as well. Like when there's a large tribal project, we might step in. And we also like to participate with other Native financial institutions. Now, that can be a Native bank. That can be another Native CDFI. So if your local CDFI, say they have a lending limit, or they don't, like say they have a lending limit, or they haven't had experience with large dollar loans, they still service the loan. They're the lead lender. They're the relationship of the loan. But we just may step in and make that deal happen. It's all about getting capital into the hands of Native American entrepreneurs and individuals, and just making self-sustainable lives for all of them. Our normal, who we normally serve on a day-to-day basis is any Native American living within the state of Oklahoma, or tribal members nationwide. Like I said, the only time we really step out of that is when we can partner with another Native organization across the country. There is a saying of Chairman Rocky Barrett, and I love to use this analogy about don't eat the seed corn, and I'm sure you guys have heard this about, reinvesting those dollars into our people, and that's what we create is revolving loan funds. We have very little grant funding available. The strategy is there, sit there and turn that dollar and make more available to our tribal members and the Native Americans living around us. And he believes to reinvest reinvest those monies and just make it more sustainable. So I'm going to read our mission. It's kind of a really long, broad one, but it might give you a little bit more, a broader look of what we do. So the CPCDC our mission is to finance, promote, educate, and inspire the entrepreneurial growth, economic opportunity, and financial well-being of the CPN tribal community and other underserved Native populations through financial education, access to capital, business development services, innovative capacity building practices, and community development initiatives. And when I say a tribal community, we're all related in some manner, and we really do treasure and know that it's our duty to mentor other Native CDFIs. If they're just emerging, just getting started, somebody was there to hold our hand through that whole way. And I think that that's something that I really enjoy doing, is just, hey, here's my phone number. If you have a question, call me. And then I do the same. Hey, have you guys ever done this, because like I said, it is a tight-knit community, and we really work together. The tribe has invested millions into CPCDC, and that's one reason why we are so successful, is that they believe in us. My board is very, very supportive. If I want to try something, they're very open let's pilot that. Let's see what's going on. But, those dollars, when it comes down, and you guys know this, what you guys do, if you don't have the dollar, you can't have the program. So it's that person. We write a lot of grants. We get a lot of loans to us as well. We've got loans through USDA, CDFI Fund, Wells Fargo. We also have, grant funding coming from the same type of sources, and foundations. Throughout time, there's been several foundations that really have jumped on board and really helped us get started. Catholic Campaign for Human Development being one in the early days. So it's just, you've got to have a really good mix a lot of times for your funding sources to be able to pass that on to your tribal community. So I've already talked about our small business lending, and like I said, that runs the gamut from micro to commercial development. We're involved in the Tribal Industrial Park right now. We're working through a new market tax credit structure right now, where we're the leverage lender. And every time we get into these complicated programs, it allows us to grow and find out more about how we can get our teeth in and push the envelope a little bit. And I think I like to be one of the innovators in the industry, just because I want to think about how my dollars, or how the CPCDC's dollars, are impacting our community. How can we grow this? How can we grow our people? Do they have what they need? Do they have the basic financial education? Just the basics going through. So we do work with people one-on-one. We probably do that less now. I work with a staff of 8, which is pure size. If I were to do a pure analysis, usually there's about 22 to 28 workers doing the same amount of work. We have to be lean and mean, and we certainly need to grow staff. Attempted to do that this year, but with, how the employment sector has been, just wasn't able to find a correct fit for our credit analyst position. But that is our aspiration, to grow that team, to be able to grow. Right when the pandemic hit, was our first housing loan. So the tribe has a housing authority, and so they serve primarily low-income individuals. The tribe owns a bank as well, which they sell their loans on the secondary market. So what we were finding was there's like this gap in between that just people weren't getting into homes. They were usually young families, single moms, maybe you're right out of college, but we're able to work with somebody, work them through the whole process. They go through home buyer ed, read chapters. We talk a lot through the process beforehand, but we're usually able to get somebody into a home about two to 3 years prior to them, if they were to wait to actually qualify on the secondary market. And I think we're trying to think innovatively there too about down payment assistance. What does that look like? Is that closing a secondary loan? Is that actually granting them the funding? What actually would work better? But we are looking at growing that portfolio and looking at actually becoming a broker to be able to offer other products. We do have an employee loan program. There's about 2,500 tribal employees that work for the nation, and that may be a little bit less than that since the pandemic. But they're able to come to us for up to a $2,000 loan, depending on how long they've been employed and if they're in good standing with their employment. And Tribal Chairman was seeing a lot of garnishments coming through, was seeing, tribal employees come with emergencies, and she was like, I would like for there to be a product to as a benefit for the employees, to where they could take their kids on vacation if their dryer broke down, that they had a source to fund without going to the buy here, pay here kind of services. So we close about 550 of those per year, probably in the $400,000 to $500,000 range. But those sit there and they turn, and pay taxes, whatever that may be. We see that as a benefit. We also have an employee jumpstart auto program, and that is a barrier to get to work, where you don't have to go to the buy here, pay 30% interest. Kind of thing. So basically, in Oklahoma, you have to have reliable transportation. We do not have public transit, and many of you may be rural as well and know the importance to have a dependable vehicle. We also have a credit builder loan program. So if somebody wants to establish or reestablish, we're able to assist, because we want at least 2 things reported on their credit. We have a HITS program, which is a home improvement and tornado shelter loan. And in Oklahoma, that's just kind of natural that, usually when there's a tornado that comes through, we have an uptick of applications. It isn't something we do a lot of, but it's at least available. Financial education and credit counseling, we found from the beginning that that's the basis of everything, all the products that we offer, is that if, an individual or a family doesn't have just that basic foundation, that we want to give them something to head towards self-sustainability and just make prudent decisions for their family. We measure a lot of our success on the business side with job creation and increase investment in Indian country. We want to, see decreased unemployment and increase financial literacy, and we do track a lot of that. So we do a lot of the impact tracking, and you all know how much just tracking of that information translates into a grant application. So we do a lot of that. We've helped, cleaners to gun rooms to a restaurant owner, antique, like I said, the gamut. But it's real impactful to see an individual, and I'll just give you an example of in Medicine Park, Oklahoma, we had a food vendor come to us, and she got a food truck and started doing the Indian tacos, and she sells out every time she's there. And so we actually participated in that loan, but since then she's been able to go and get a second food truck, and now she actually has bought 2 rental properties. So it's almost like that foundation, because our client isn't the one that can go to the bank. They may have Bruce credit, they may not have a down payment or collateral, but we want to work through those things. And as long as our borrowers are staying in contact with us, we're going to work with them. So that's really just a real overview of what we do, and maybe Casey might have some questions, or y'all might have some questions that you want answered.
Okay, so I'm going to kick this off by asking a few questions that come up often kind of in this format, and then we'll open it up to you guys. But one question I thought we might explore is, what should tribes consider if they're interested in setting up their own native CDFI or even community development corporation? And can you describe what the difference is between community development corporation and CDFI?
I think it's 2 different designations, basically, is what that is. I think it's important to find your champion. That either that is already in-house, you already have that expertise, that somebody's a real go-getter that can do the research, can really dig in, or you need a good hire. You need somebody that's passionate about what they do and helping Native people. Without that passion, that CDFI is probably not going to be that successful. And that's what you see in the Native CDFI field is, there's just a lot of passionate and very creative individuals. And I love being in a room that you go, I never thought of that. That's an excellent idea. But yeah, I think that the research side, get on the CDFI Fund's website, see what the qualifications are. A lot of times consultants, there's some consultants out there that can kind of hold your hand through the process. And also First Nations OWISA, now I think it's just going by OWISA Corp. They have a program that's able to help individuals as well, or tribes as well.
Testing, okay. So I think that you mentioned, we talked about, I think the Community Development Corporation was instituted in 2003 at Citizen Potawatomi Nation, and then it was 2013 when we became a native CDFI, or 14.
It was actually 4,
later.
2004.
Oh,
yeah.
It was 4, okay.
Yeah.
So I guess one of the questions I have is, what role does technical assistance education play in what you do? So you mentioned really working with other CDFIs and kind of sharing that dialogue. So what kind of specific technical assistance or education do you provide to others?
Yeah, I think it's, we work best one-on-one. We might do group setting as well, workshops, have an entrepreneurial workshop. We've done a workshop for tribal enterprises, was our most latest workshop that we've had, and that was for directors of departments of CPN. We'll do financial education lunch and learns. With each employee loan, they get a credit counseling session. Now, it may just be reviewing this is your credit score, this is what you're doing really good, but you could really work right here. Why do you go to payday lenders? Could we help you get out of that cycle? Yeah, I think the one-on-one, I think, is the most important out of that. But whenever you're working in workshops, especially in the financial education realm, I look at it as planting seeds. You don't know exactly when it's going to sprout, but you're kind of just planting ideas, and hopefully, someone is serious enough to make that happen.
Okay, thank you for that. I know that you mentioned this, and Cindy and I have worked together kind of in the grant space. And when I first started, actually my very first, the first grant that I wrote for Citizen Potawatomi Nation was in collaboration with our CDC, and it was actually for a HUD, urban development grant. which I thought was uncharacteristic, and it was the first time I'd been exposed to it. But we got through it, and we weren't awarded, but we got through it. Can you kind of tell the audience how much time you spend seeking outside funds, specifically grant funds?
I spent a lot of time on that. In fact, I've had to hire a grants and finance manager this last year, just for, seeking of that. Because every day I'm talking to banks, I'm hustling, finding new contacts. Events like this, just networking with people. You know how you just go like, oh, you're a funder, or, have you heard what we're doing? Or you get introduced to someone. And so a lot of my time, I couldn't tell you out of the week, but a lot of time is actually spent there. Even assisting Casey's office in writing that ICDBG grant, they do the heavy lift, but I still got to, provide the details and updates and that sort of thing. And I do appreciate the help and the assistance of her office.
Yeah, speaking of HUD, they do have the Indian Community Block Grant, Development Block Grant opportunity every year. And so every couple of years, we actually submit an application for a micro-enterprise program. So that is a possibility for funding as well, for those of you who don't know that or want to be aware. So I had a question about, you mentioned a great project in our community where you were able to help someone with the food truck project, I guess I would call it that. Can you think of another great project that where without the CDFI it wouldn't have happened?
Oh, yeah. That is probably more than half of our borrowers, and we closed $12 million in business loans last year. One would be our local dry cleaner. When he came to us, he had federal tax liens. He, had messed up his credit. It was just a mess. And so that very first interaction we had with him, we had to get creative because we couldn't make him a loan. What we did is we purchased the equipment and made him a lease. So we leased the equipment to him. And as he was building his credit and growing, he was able to purchase a building. He was actually behind it able to build a facility that had the big, huge machines that could do all the laundry for our Grand Hotel and casino. And now he has actually built in another small town about, I don't even know how, 10 miles away in Tecumseh, actually built a location, a drop-off location where they do take the laundry back. And he's opened a second location there in Shawnee. So I think without the help of the CPCDC, that probably never would have happened, because he probably would have just kept there in that cycle of, crisis mode. I need to get my taxes paid. I'm just, just trying to collect a dollar to get my employees paid. So he's been very inspiring.
Yeah, I think that's a great example, and a lot of members in our local community use that dry cleaner, so it's been an inspirational story. So I'm kind of out of questions for Cindy. She'll be happy to know that, but we'll open it up for you guys and see if you guys have any questions for her. And please feel free, I can bring the mic to you, or feel free to come up to the mic.
The CDFI, these things are weird, on their website. So you have to apply to be eligible to become a CDFI?
Yes, you have. It's an application process, and there's some criteria, like you already have to have some loans on the books. So just by knowing the criteria of what it's going to take to get certified, you have to demonstrate that, like you have to find a target market. So if you're just a CDFI at large that's not native focused, that a lot of times is low to moderate income individuals. So your loans can only be to, or primarily to, those low to moderate income. And so with having the native set aside, our loans are native focused. 60% of our loans have to go to Native American individuals. We close much more in the 90-some% range, and if it's a non-native, it's usually they are a vendor of the tribe. That it complements the tribe in some manner that makes it sense to make sure, by using up our dollars on a non-native, it has to complement, what our tribal community in some kind of manner.
So you have to start with being a bank or like some kind of financial institution to
And they
have
call those
loans on
loan
the books.
funds, yeah. You'd be a loan fund. It could look a little different, but you just have to have loans on the books. Yeah.
Did you guys work with any of the SSBCI funds that's been flying around here?
We're working on it. We're working on it. I think that's been a kind of a frustrating program right now with them pushing back the application process period. I mean, I think the same people that were kind of scratching their heads whenever the first deadline was is probably still scratching their head now. We probably had, 12 tribal entities call us saying, hey, can you help us out here? Well, the way that program is structured, having to have the matching dollars and to have the 1-to-1 match and then the 10-to-1 over 10 years, how am I, going with 8 people going to arrange that for 12 other tribes? It's just, I would have to really staff up, which probably isn't totally impossible, but I don't even know if it works for us yet, and I'm not going to go into something like that unless I'm given 100%.
So I wonder who is working with those, because I work for a tribe from Alaska, and we were wanting to work with an entity that prioritized Native loans, and they kept talking about, there's a lot of language that, I didn't know anything about, and that having a CDFI or being in partnership with a CDFI seemed to be one of their criteria, yeah. And so we were kind of on the search far and wide, and are running out of time.
Yeah, I think that when they expanded this program, because it was a program to the states, about 10 years ago, whenever they expanded this to tribes, they really didn't think through how that would affect tribes. If you have to show you have the capacity, that you have the experience. And if you don't have that, I think Native CDFIs, they could only, maybe assist 1 or 2 with the regulations that's around that. So that is a huge challenge, and it's not only for your tribe, it's for many, many tribes. I know that there is one group, and I'm totally blank on what the name of his corporation is, but I could follow up. I know it's Jay Calhoun that used to run Cherokee Enterprises out of Tulsa. He actually has an investment group, so he's doing venture capitalists. So he's getting just a whole pool of a bunch of tribes, and he's finding the matching dollars, but it's venture capital. It's different than loans. So basically, he's buying in which is allowable with SSBCI, the VC, but they're actually buying into an entity, into a business. Like that business owner is no longer going to own that 100%. So I think it's all about getting the dollar into Indian country, however that happens. But the thing is how creative can we get to try to get around or work these very, very difficult, regulations that they have around that program.
It's kind of frustrating for us, because their answer to us was like, well, work with your state, but our state doesn't, they won't. When we said, well, we want to prioritize Indian loans, there's no, it doesn't feel like that would be any of their priority. So it's like, here, you get this money, it's yours, all you have to do is ask for it, but then we got to hand it over to somebody
Yeah, it's frustrating.
who doesn't have the same priorities.
Do you know anyone from Alaska Growth Capital?
No.
That might be a really good introduction. And I'll look at some other colleagues in Alaska. Jeff Tickle might be another one. But Alaska Growth Capital just got a new market tax credit allocation. So they're going to be probably used to very complicated transactions. And it may just be plugging you into, who is in the industry and is willing to and able to help somebody get their allocation out.
Okay, thank you for that discussion. Anybody else have any questions?
Thank you. You mentioned new market tax credits. Do you use them to fund the CDFI, or how does that work?
We have applied for about 5 years now, and I'm not the only organization, or we're not the only organization that is very frustrated at the moment. I even know Native American Bank, which is very large and very capable, they're in the very same boat as we are at this point. So what is happening well, let me step back. I sit on the board of the Native CDFI Network, and we're an advocacy group based out of DC for Native CDFIs, and that's exactly what we're advocating for. We want to set aside. We want new markets to be allocated into Native groups, just not into Native loans. We're advocating to get those dollars into those large dollar projects on tribal lands. And so we're seeing the very first step to this, and that is the CDFI is funding 2 trainings for Native CDFIs. And the first is happening, I believe, in September in Denver. It's in Colorado somewhere, I think it's Denver. And that'll be kind of like New Market Tax Credit 101. It'll allow CDFIs to kind of explore, is this for me? You know, am I large enough? Do I have the capacity? And then in the spring, we're going to have New Market Tax Credit, 102 or whatever. And that is to kind of build those concepts, and they're going to provide one-on-one technical assistance with experienced New Market Tax Credit individuals. So we're we're on the cusp. We haven't got the set aside yet, but we're right on the cusp of making a difference there and saying, hey, we want to set aside, give us 5% of that allocation. And what we're seeing is if anything's happened, it's going to these big boys that aren't Native. They're not, but they're saying that they're going to do Native projects. So if all the Native financial institutions kind of stick together, and even if I have a large project that I can't do, but I go to the tribally owned bank, I go to another, CDFI, get all these, if I can get a deal done that way, I'd much rather that happen than it go to the big boy, go to Chase or Wells or something like that. Because it's very important. It's going to only churn those dollars within Native communities.
Yeah, I'd be interested in that course or whatever you're going to do in Denver.
Yeah.
And that's through CDFI, through?
CDFI Fund is funding it. I think the consultant group is something like Blue Stream Consulting or something like that. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? Comments?
I'm curious, the gentleman back here in the red said he had a Native CDFI in his community. What CDFI is in your community?
It's Leech Lake Financial Services.
Yes, very familiar.
Anybody else? Cindy, do you have any parting thoughts for the audience today?
Well, I think that would only be, I'm sure you guys are at least involved in tribal planning. Maybe you're the person looking for tribal dollars. But if you have a deal that needs to be done, first of all, think of a Native CDFI. Think of a Native organization, a Native bank, before maybe the big boys, because I know several banks that are Native owned that are willing to play and support Indian country. I will also say that, do a scan of your community. Think about what that could do for your tribal employees. What could that do for your tribal members? What could a CDFI do for if you don't have access to credit to where you live? What does that mean to your tribal economy? Keeping that dollar within and churning at home before it leaves the reservation, churn it 1, 2, 3 times, what does that mean? So, maybe sometimes it's just assessing, right? Stepping back a little bit and assessing how can we use tools that's available out there to better our community.
Okay, thank you everybody for attending today, and if you'll give Cindy a round of applause, I'd be grateful.
Thank you.
Thanks.